Welcome to Build a Lot Acres. Today we're going to go through the garden tractor collection. As you can see, I have a number of older vintage garden tractors that I've collected over the years and I use in my property. Now, to start with, let's kind of differentiate between a garden tractor and a lawnmower. A lot of people use the terms interchangeably, but garden tractors are much heavier duty built, heavier in weight and features. They have much heavier duty components such as transaxles, engines, rear ends, tires, hubs, 3-point hitches. They're able to engage the ground. Whereas lawnmowers are mainly meant to mow grass. They're lightweight and they can't really do a lot of work compared to a true garden tractor. So with that out of the way, let's begin with the 1986 Ingersoll 448. This has an 18 horsepower Onan engine, which is a Canadian engine manufacturer. The Onans are not too popular now, but they were very common back in the 70s and 80s with garden tractors. The 448 would be what you call a high wheel garden tractor for Case or Ingersoll. They had three main series. They had the Low Pros, which are a 12-inch rear tire. They had the High Wheelers, which have a 16-inch rear tire, and the High Loader, which is a purpose-built loader tractor with a bucket. So the High Wheelers with the 8x16 tires basically are, I would classify them as the most popular series. That's what a lot of people think of when they think of Case Ingersoll as the big tire models. So these would have a 32-inch back tire. They have 16 by 6.5 by 8 front tires. They weigh, give or take, 800 pounds dry. A lot of them came outfitted with PTOs, 3-point hitches, as you can see here. This would be the HH34 3-point hitch, which is a later model designed to fit multiple series, whereas the earlier model, the J26 type hitches, were specifically for the 400 series. But this hitch, the HH34, will fit a Low Pro, a High Wheeler, a High Loader. It's a heavier duty built hitch. It'll pick up more weight, and it's just a little more robust. Moving on to the tractor itself. It's a hydraulic drive, just like all the Case Ingersolls, except for there's one gear model, the 210. But it's hydraulically driven, so there's no belts, there are gears like a normal tractor would have, per se. It's got a 2-speed, high-low transaxle, so you have a nice selection of how fast you can go for different chores. This particular tractor has Verenstein V61 5-rib tires in the front, 16 by 6.5 by 8. They're a European tire. They're nice tires for a variety of chores, from mowing to snow removal to gardening. They give good traction, but they don't tear up grass like some more aggressive tires do, like a tri-rib or a snow hog. We have the 48-inch snowcaster here. It's a single-stage snow blower. It's got extension wings bringing it out to 52 inches in total width, and then it has custom drift cutters that I made. So when I snow blow, I can carve out a nice clean edge on the snowbanks. So that's the Ingersoll 448. And those are the D10 cast iron wheel weights, which have the 6 holes so you can get to the tire lugs without having to take the weights off. Moving on, we will go to the Sears SS 14. This is a 1971 model. That's the only year they made this particular tractor. They had the SS 15 in 1972 only. And before these tractors, they had the Suburbans, which are pretty similar. They're very well known. The Sears Suburban is a time-proven tractor. They had Tecumseh engines, whereas the SS 14 and 15 had big Brigg engines. Therefore, they have a slightly wider hood to accommodate the bigger engine. You know, more horsepower, a little heavier in weight than your typical Suburban. 23 by 10.5 back tires with 50-pound cast weights. I have a cab that I made a number of years ago. Still have to put some vinyl doors, but keeps the snow off. 16 by 6.5 front tires. I have the 39-inch snow thrower, which is a single stage. Works pretty well. Oh. The Sears also has a 2-speed rear end. Sears also has a manual transmission. I do have a 3-point hitch for this. The Sears 3-point hitches are not a true category 0 like a normal garden tractor. They're specific to Sears, so the implements will only fit on this. You couldn't use regular category 0 implements because they're too wide. I believe the Sears 3-point hitches are about 4 inches narrower than a normal category 0. It's a 16 versus 20 width. Moving on, we have the Massey Ferguson 214 GTX. Earlier I mentioned the low pro case Ingersolls. So Ingersoll built this particular tractor. They built tractors for Massey Ferguson in the early 90s, approximately 1990 to 1992, which is the era this tractor is. There's a few differences. The Massey Fergusons chose to use Kohler Magnum engines, whereas the low pros on Ingersoll use Vanguard Brig engines. And obviously the hood, the colors and the hood shape, the grille is a little different. But it has a 48-inch deck, 16 by 6.5 front tires, 23 by 10.5 rear tires with 50-pound cast iron weights. Has a 2-speed axle, just like the high wheeler that I showed earlier. Heavy duty rear end with a tow hitch. It's been a good tractor. So next up we have perhaps the largest garden tractor ever made, the Simplicity Powermax 9020. This came in a number of different variants. There was the Simplicity 4040, the 4041, and the 9020. There's also Alice Chalmers 616, 620, 720, which are basically the same tractor. They also made a Montgomery Ward's Twin 20. They're all the same. They're all Powermax tractors with different decals and hoods and whatnot. But these tractors are unique in a few different ways. They're one of the only garden tractors that I'm aware of that has a 3-speed rear end versus a 1 or a 2, which is a typical in a garden tractor. So you have a hydrostatic transmission over a 3-speed gearbox, resulting in a lot of different gear options. So this tractor goes up to 10.4 miles per hour in high. It has a 19.5 horsepower Onan engine. You'll see that it has hydraulic outlets in the front. So if you wanted to have a angling snow plow or something that required hydraulics, if you wanted to run a hay elevator, something like that, you could do it. It has a massive 60-inch deck. This thing will gobble up grass very fast. You can easily mow over an acre of grass per hour with this machine. It's very heavy. These Powermaxes came in at about 1,300 pounds dry weight without a deck. So as you compare with a high wheeler that we looked at earlier, which is a big tractor, it's only about 800 pounds. So this is a lot heavier. It's a big machine. The other cool thing about these Powermaxes is it came with 3 different options for tires, both front and rear. This particular one has a 20 by 8 by 10 fronts and the 29 by 12.5 by 15 rear, which is kind of like their turf tire setup. You can also get it with high flotation rear tires, or you can get it with ag tires, which would be 8 by 16, same as a high wheeler. And the high flotations would be 31 by 15.5 by 15. In the back, we have a typical category 0 3-point hitch. There's also a rear PTO that this particular tractor doesn't have. And if you're wondering, this particular tractor is on casters. Because I'm working on it, it's just easier to move around. It's so heavy, it's hard to move, even in neutral. So I have it on caster so I can move it around where I need it. Moving on, we have another 448, very similar. to the 448 we saw earlier. This one is a 1983 model versus the other one, which is an 86. Other than that, it's very similar. It's got, this is what they call a black frame, which is typically considered a 1984 only. They have white seats, white implements. They have the black and white stripe going down the hood. These would be considered black frame tractors. This was made in late 1983 for the model 1984 year. We have my son's 220, which is what you would call a low pro. It's a 12-inch rear rim versus a 16-inch rim in the high wheelers. Other than that, it's a little bit shorter, a little bit in every way. It's shorter in length, shorter in height, shorter in width, but it's very comparable to a high wheel. You can see the difference in the tires from one series to the other. There's quite a difference. This particular tractor is a 1985 model with a leftover 1984 year black frame hood, but you can see the frame is not black, so it would not be considered a black frame. This particular model is a Kohler K-Series 10 horsepower engine, which is a single cylinder. It has the D8 cast iron wheel weights. Again, this one has the 5 holes so you can get to the lugs. Tow hitch, the ball. Has a 2-speed axle. Hydraulic drive, just like its big brother, the high wheeler. And lastly, we'll go to the Simplicity GTH 20, which most would consider a Sunstar. The Simplicity Sunstars were the largest series garden tractor they made in that era. Following the Powermaxes, which were discontinued, the Sunstar was the next big thing in the Simplicity lineup. So these would have been the top of the line Simplicity for the late 1980s, early 1990s. This particular tractor is approximately a 1991 to 1992 model. This tractor has a 20 horsepower Kohler Magnum. The 20 horsepower models in the Sunstar lineup had certain features that the other Sunstars either didn't have or were only optional, such as a locking differential, power steering, a 2-speed rear end. You could either get those with the 18 horsepower or 16 horsepower Sunstar, or they weren't available. So the 2-speed rear axle is standard on this, but it's not available at all on an 18 horsepower Sunstar. In the locking differential and the power steering is optional on the lower model horsepower models, but it's standard on this. So this is a big tractor, as you can see, compared to some of the other tractors. It has a very large hood, has a big stance. It's, I'd say, pretty comparable in size to a high wheel case. You know, it's well over 800 pound tractor dry. I'd say around 865 pounds without the deck. 23 by 12, 23 by 10.5 by 12 rear tires, 16 by 6.5 by 8 front tires. Has a 48-inch deck. It's very nice shape. Has a power bagger, which has a caster cart that goes on the back to collect your grass and leaves. There's a Sunstrand hydro tranny. And that is it for my garden tractor collection. Please see future videos where I'll be showing off the Coyote NX 4510 and the Ford 1700.
If you like this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe and come back for more next time.